The garage, a haven of grease, steel, and forgotten sunlight, held Eleanor Vance within its quiet embrace. At 68, a widow for 5 long years, she moved through the workshop's familiar clutter with a practiced grace, her hands, marked by the wisdom of countless repairs, tracing the cool chrome of her late husband's cherished touring motorcycle. Dust motes danced in the sparse shafts of light that pierced the grimy windows, each speck a tiny, shimmering ghost in the air, echoing the silent particles of memory that perpetually swirled around her. The scent of motor oil and aged leather, a perfume of journeys past, clung to every surface, a constant, tender reminder of a life once shared, vibrant and roaring. This particular morning, the silence felt heavier than usual, a thick shroud woven from the threads of countless unspoken conversations. Eleanor was meticulously polishing the fuel tank, her reflection a soft, blurred image in the mirror-like surface. The motorcycle, a gleaming silver beast, was more than just a machine. It was a sarcophagus of adventures, a silent testament to a love that had once devoured horizons. Its very presence was her most potent ritual of remembrance. Each stroke of the cloth was a caress, a silent conversation with Thomas, her husband. She remembered his booming laugh, his calloused hand resting on her knee as they paused at a roadside diner, the wind whipping through their hair on an endless stretch of highway. Now, the wind only carried the whisper of an empty road. Her world had shrunk since Thomas's passing. From vast open highways it had condensed into the 4 walls of this garage, punctuated by trips to the local market where her presence often went unnoticed. At the grocery store she'd wait patiently, a polite smile fixed on her lips, only to be bypassed by younger, busier shoppers. At the bank, her voice, soft from disuse, sometimes faded beneath the cheerful chatter of a teller, more interested in their mobile, a device than the quiet woman standing before them. It wasn't overt malice, simply indifference, the insidious kind that gradually erases one from the vivid tapestry of life, turning them into a muted background detail. One crisp autumn day, she had stood by Thomas's grave, the earth freshly turned, the air biting with a cold that seeped into her bones. A memory, stark and vivid, had pierced the fog of her grief. Thomas, grinning, his arm around her as they stood by this very motorcycle, its engine, a low, comforting thrum. "This isn't just a bike, Elle," he'd said, his eyes sparkling with an endless horizon. "It's freedom. It's us." The words, once a promise, had transformed into an ache, a constant pressure behind her ribs. She'd clutched the cool steel of his old wrench, a tool he'd always kept close, a tangible link to his presence. Now, she simply polished. The wrench lay beside her, a heavy, cold comfort, a symbol of a life of repairs that had stopped, leaving her with the biggest repair of all, her own broken heart. The world outside the garage doors continued its hurried pace, oblivious, leaving Eleanor and her memories suspended in a quiet, metallic haze. She was simply a grey silhouette against the vibrant hum of existence, a silent observer in a world that had forgotten how to truly see. The oppressive summer sun beat down, turning the asphalt outside the garage into a shimmering mirage. Eleanor, absorbed in the delicate task of tuning the carburetor of an old cruiser, barely noticed the gentle rap on the metal door. It was tentative, almost shy, a sound so faint it could have been the wind playing tricks on the loose corrugated sheets. She wiped her hands on a grease-stained rag, her movements unhurried, a slight frown creasing her brow. Who would be calling at this hour in this heat? Most folks knew better than to disturb the quiet solitude of her workshop. She walked to the door, its cool metal a stark contrast to the oven-like air, pulling it. Open? She blinked against the sudden glare, and there, bathed in the blinding light, stood a boy. He was thin, perhaps 8 or 9, his face smudged with dirt, his small frame radiating a palpable exhaustion. His hair, a tangle of sun-bleached brown, stuck to his forehead with sweat, and his bare feet, dusty and calloused, spoke of a long, arduous journey. In his hand, he clutched a plastic bottle, its emptiness a silent plea. "Ma'am," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp, barely audible above the distant hum of summer insects. "Would you happen to have any water?" Eleanor's initial surprise gave way to a gentle, almost instinctual kindness. Her own throat felt dry just looking at him. "Of course, child," she said, her voice softer than she'd intended. "Come in, the sun today is truly relentless." She ushered him into the cooler, shadowed interior of the garage, the scent of motor oil and leather a comforting presence around them. She filled his bottle from a large dispenser by the workbench, the gurgling sound a small symphony of relief. As she handed it back, his small fingers brushed hers, a fleeting contact that sparked something deep within her, a forgotten warmth. But the boy didn't leave. He stood, sipping slowly, his eyes wide and curious, darting around the workshop. His gaze lingered on the polished chrome, the gleaming paintwork, the rows of tools hanging neatly on the pegboard. The sheer scale and intricate beauty of the motorcycles seemed to mesmerize him, pulling him further into her silent world. "Are they all yours?" he finally asked, his voice a little stronger now, filled with the child's unfiltered wonder. Eleanor smiled, a genuine, unforced curve of her lips that hadn't graced her face in what felt like an eternity. "They are my road companions," she replied, wiping her hands again, savoring the feeling of his innocent curiosity. "And each one holds a story, you see." His eyes, the color of moss after rain, settled on the motorcycle resting on the lift, the very one she had been working on. "And that one," he murmured, a note of awe in his tone. Her gaze softened, drifting to the classic bike. "That one belonged to my husband," she said, her voice a low murmur, heavy with memory. "We traveled the world together on her. Now she rests here with me, a keeper of our shared adventures." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the boy's soft breathing. He shifted his weight, his bare feet tracing patterns on the concrete floor. "I don't have a father," he said, his voice dropping to a fragile thread. "But sometimes I imagine he rode a motorcycle too." His words, simple and unadorned, pierced Eleanor's heart with an unexpected force, echoing a profound absence she understood all too well. In his eyes she saw a reflection of her own longing, the aching void left by a loved one, yet also the persistent human need to believe that love endures, that connection persists somewhere, somehow. This boy, this stranger, held a mirror to her own grief but also to her hidden resilience. An impulse, surprising in its intensity, stirred within her. She moved towards the silent machine. "Would you like to learn how to start her?" she asked, the words emerging almost before she had fully formed the thought. The boy's eyes, a moment ago shadowed with quiet sadness, now ignited with a pure, unadulterated brilliance. A spark, long dormant in Eleanor's own heart, flickered to life in response. She found a small old helmet, painted with faded racing stripes that had once belonged to a younger relative, and gently placed it on his head, the worn padding soft against his thin temples. His hands, tentative at first, clutched the handlebars as she guided them. "Just like this," she instructed, her voice calm and steady, guiding his small fingers to the accelerator, then the ignition. The engine coughed once, then roared to life, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through the floorboards, through Eleanor's own weary bones, and through the boy's small frame. It was a sound both primal and exhilarating, a heartbeat awakened. The wide, unrestrained smile that bloomed on the boy's face, illuminated by the garage's dim light, was the most beautiful sound Eleanor had heard in years, a melody of pure, unburdened joy that chased away the lingering echoes of her own sorrow, if only for a fleeting, precious moment. In the days that followed, The boy, whom Eleanor instinctively began to call Sam, appeared every afternoon, as if drawn by an invisible thread. He arrived silently, sometimes carrying a small, worn backpack, always with that quiet, intense curiosity. He didn't ask for water anymore, simply offered his presence. A silent pact formed between them. Eleanor, initially hesitant to allow anyone into her carefully constructed solitude, found herself looking forward to his arrival, a subtle shift in the rhythm of her solitary days. He would help clean tools, his small hands, surprisingly agile as he wiped grease from wrenches and screwdrivers, arranging them in neat rows on the workbench. He watched her every movement, his gaze unwavering, absorbing the nuances of her craft, the almost meditative concentration she brought to each task. Slowly, tentatively, Eleanor began to teach him, not just the names of tools, but their purpose, their feel, the stories they held. She showed him how to identify different parts of an engine, how to gently tighten a bolt, how to carefully clean a spark plug. His initial awkwardness gave way to a growing confidence, his questions becoming more insightful, his observations sharper. He learned to disassemble and reassemble small components, his brow furrowed in concentration, his tongue often poking out the corner of his mouth, a habit that made Eleanor smile. With each shared task, a fragment of Eleanor's dormant self began to awaken. Her hands, once simply mourning, now found renewed purpose in guiding his, in demonstrating techniques, in feeling the satisfying click of a well-fitted part. The smell of oil, once a melancholic reminder, now carried the fresh scent of shared endeavor. She found herself humming old tunes as they worked, melodies she hadn't hummed since Thomas's passing. These weren't grand cathartic releases of emotion, but small, almost imperceptible shifts, the blossoming of a quiet joy, born from the simple act of sharing knowledge, of connecting with another soul. The garage, once a sanctuary of memories, was slowly transforming into a workshop of present moments, each clink of a wrench, each whispered instruction, weaving new threads into the fabric of Eleanor's life, transforming her grief from a raw wound into a landscape of tender remembrance. One afternoon, Sam arrived at the garage quieter than usual, his customary bright curiosity dulled by an unseen weight. He moved with a hesitant slowness, his eyes, typically alight with questions about engine parts or chrome. Finishes now distant, shadowed by an unfamiliar melancholy. Eleanor, sensitive to the subtle shifts in human emotion that often went unvoiced, noticed immediately. She paused her work, the fine grit sandpaper she was using to smooth a rusted exhaust pipe momentarily forgotten in her hand. The silence in the garage seemed to stretch, no longer comfortable but tinged with an unspoken sadness. He sat on an overturned bucket, his small frame almost lost in the vastness of the workshop, and picked at a loose thread on his worn jeans. "Do you think," he began, his voice barely a murmur, a mere wisp of sound in the cavernous space, "do you think good people ever truly go away forever?" His question, stark in its simplicity, hung in the air, a profound echo of Eleanor's own deepest fears and long-held sorrows. It wasn't a casual query, it was a plea, a vulnerable reach for understanding, born from a pain that mirrored her own. Eleanor stopped her sanding, letting the pipe clatter softly against the workbench. She turned fully to face him, her gaze gentle, unwavering, meeting his clouded eyes. She saw in his young face the ghost of her own past, the profound bewilderment of loss that so often leaves one feeling adrift and abandoned. "No, Sam," she said, her voice clear and steady, imbued with the wisdom gleaned from countless lonely sunsets and quiet mornings. "They don't. They stay in what we do when we remember them. They stay in the lessons they taught us, in the kindness they showed us, in the way they shaped the very person we are." She paused, then gestured towards Thomas's motorcycle, its engine still warm from an earlier adjustment. "You hear that sound?" she asked, a soft invitation to listen. Every rotation, every thrum of the engine, it holds a little bit of everyone who has ever been here, a piece of their spirit, their journey, their love. It lives on, as long as we carry it forward. A flicker of understanding, slow and uncertain, crossed Sam's face. He offered a small tentative smile, but there was still a residue of sorrow in his eyes, a blend of yearning and nascent courage that tugged at Eleanor's own heartstrings. She saw then, with a clarity that surprised her, that Sam's need went beyond just learning mechanics or finding a temporary diversion. He needed an anchor, a steady presence, a connection that could help him navigate the turbulent waters of his own unspoken grief and questions. He needed not just a mentor for his hands, but a guide for his heart. This realization marked a quiet but profound turning point for Eleanor. Up until then, her generosity had been largely reactive, responding to Sam's request for water, his fascination with the bikes, his eagerness to learn. Now she felt a shift, a stirring of something deeper, a desire to offer more than just a passing kindness. She saw a lonely child, perhaps navigating an indifferent world himself, much like she had felt in her own grief. She observed his subtle flinches. When a loud noise startled him, the way he sometimes hunched his shoulders as if carrying an invisible burden, the silent hunger in his eyes when she occasionally shared a homemade cookie she'd baked. His quietness today wasn't just about his father, it was about the broader loneliness he carried. Eleanor decided to act. Her offering became more proactive, a quiet expansion of her solitary world to encompass his. She began to plan small projects for them, tasks that required not just mechanical skill but patience, observation and shared concentration. She taught him how to meticulously clean and condition the worn leather of old saddlebags, her own gnarled fingers guiding his small ones, explaining the importance of preserving the stories etched into the material. They spent hours together, not just fixing but mending, restoring, bringing forgotten beauty back to life. She shared with him anecdotes from her and Thomas's travels, stories of overcoming breakdowns in remote places, of strangers' kindness on lonely roads, of the quiet camaraderie that forms between riders. Each tale was a gentle lesson, woven into the fabric of their shared work, showing him that even in loss there was continuity, and in struggle there was always the possibility of repair. Their connection deepened, becoming a quiet reciprocity. Sam, in turn, began to bring her small treasures he'd found, a shiny pebble, a perfectly shaped leaf, a discarded bolt he thought might be useful. These offerings, small as they were priceless to Eleanor, tangible tokens of his trust and affection. He would sometimes simply sit with her while she ate a sandwich, his silent presence a comforting balm against the ache of her solitude. He didn't demand conversation. He simply offered companionship, a quiet acceptance that allowed Eleanor to simply be, without the need to explain or justify her grief. The garage, once a crucible of her sorrow, slowly transformed into a haven of shared purpose. Eleanor discovered that in the act of giving her time, her knowledge, her quiet presence to this small boy, she was in essence giving it back to herself. Each bolt tightened, each story shared, each moment of Sam's unfiltered joy was a tiny stitch in the unraveling tapestry of her own loneliness, gently mending the frayed edges of her heart. She found herself smiling more, her laughter, though soft and infrequent, a genuine sound that surprised even herself. The melancholic hum that had once characterized her days began to give way to a quiet, profound sense of fulfillment. The healing wasn't about forgetting, but about creating new memories, new connections, new reasons to embrace the present. The dust motes in the sunbeams still danced, but now they seemed to shimmer with a lighter, more hopeful light, reflecting not just the past, but the burgeoning promise of a future woven from shared kindness. Eleanor began to wake with a subtle sense of anticipation, a gentle stirring that replaced the dull ache of waking alone. The methodical clink of tools, the smell of oil, the quiet hum of the workshop, all these familiar elements now carried a different resonance, infused with the presence of another. She started to prepare a little extra tea each morning, a silent acknowledgement that her world was expanding. She even found herself meticulously cleaning a small, dusty corner of the workbench, carving out a dedicated space for Sam's burgeoning collection of salvaged nuts and bolts, a testament to his growing engagement. The memories of Thomas still visited her, often evoked by a particular wrench or a shared joke from one of their past rides. But now, these memories were less like sharp shards of pain and more like smooth, polished stones, precious, tangible, holding the warmth of a life well lived. She saw Thomas's grin in Sam's intense focus, heard echoes of his adventurous spirit in the boy's eager questions. Intending to Sam's quiet needs, she wasn't replacing Thomas, but honoring his legacy of open roads and open hearts. Her quiet courage was in continuing to open her heart, even after it had been so profoundly broken. She understood then that the silent language of empathy, the profound act of seeing and responding to another's unspoken need, was perhaps the most potent medicine for her own solitude. The quiet transformation unfolding within Eleanor's garage began, subtly, to ripple outward. Mr. Henderson, the mail carrier, a man of precise roots and silent observations, was the first to notice. For years his daily passage had been marked by the unvarying solitude of Eleanor's property, the closed garage door, the neatly tended but silent front garden, the occasional glimpse of her moving with a quiet, almost spectral efficiency. Now, however, the air around the workshop carried a different resonance. He heard the faint, high-pitched laughter of a child, the metallic clink of tools punctuated by a cheerful hum, and sometimes the low, steady rumble of a motorcycle engine being tested, followed by a shared exclamation of satisfaction. Mr. Henderson, a man not prone to idle speculation, simply noted the change, a faint, almost imperceptible lift in his own spirit as he delivered the mail. He had often worried about Eleanor, the weight of her grief palpable even from a distance, and now he sensed a different, lighter presence. Mrs. Jenkins, Eleanor's next-door neighbor, was less subtle in her observations, a woman of robust opinions and an unwavering belief in moving on. She had, for the past 5 years, offered Eleanor a steady stream of unsolicited advice. "You should sell those noisy machines, Eleanor. It's not healthy to stay cooped up. Time to find a hobby that doesn't remind you of the past." Her intentions, though perhaps well-meaning, always landed with the gentle impact of a hammer, often leaving Eleanor feeling more invisible and misunderstood than before. One afternoon, while watering her prize-winning petunias, Mrs. Jenkins watched as Sam, his face beaming, helped Eleanor push Thomas's now gleaming motorcycle out into the sunlight. Eleanor's own face, usually serene but reserved, held a radiant smile, her hand resting gently on Sam's shoulder. Mrs. Jenkins blinked, then blinked again. She had never seen Eleanor look so alive. The sight was so incongruous with her established narrative of the grieving widow that she simply shook her head, muttering about youthful influence, before retreating indoors, a seed of genuine curiosity rather than judgment now planted in her mind. The circle of Eleanor's renewed engagement slowly began to expand. It wasn't through grand gestures or public announcements, but through small, almost accidental interactions. A local farmer passing by noticed the perfectly restored chrome bumper Eleanor and Sam had lovingly worked on, glinting proudly outside the garage. He remembered a rusted component on his own old tractor. Hesitantly, he approached, asking if Eleanor might be able to offer some advice. Eleanor, armed with a new sense of value and a quiet confidence born from her shared work with Sam, responded with her usual calm dignity. She offered not just advice, but a willingness to look, to consider, to lend her hands to a new problem. This simple act of assistance, a quiet act of shared competence, earned her a reputation beyond the garage, a ripple of quiet admiration in the small, unassuming community. The mechanics. Skill she possessed, once solely dedicated to preserving Thomas's memory, now found a broader purpose. Her reputation for meticulous work and genuine kindness spread not through advertisements, but through whispered recommendations and grateful smiles. The garage, once a sealed sanctuary, now occasionally welcomed a neighbor's sputtering lawnmower or a child's broken bicycle. Eleanor found herself engaging in small, unforced conversations with these visitors, sharing stories, offering tea, her world gradually growing wider, richer. The fear of being seen, of stepping beyond the protective veil of her grief, had slowly dissipated, replaced by the quiet confidence of someone who had found their unique place. The symbolic object of Thomas's motorcycle, once primarily a monument to loss, underwent its own transformation. It was no longer merely a relic of a vanished past, but a living testament to an enduring spirit. Eleanor and Sam spent weeks preparing it, cleaning, polishing, making minor adjustments. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Eleanor, with Sam proudly by her side, started the engine. The powerful roar, once a bittersweet reminder, now sounded like a triumphant anthem, a symphony of shared purpose and renewed hope. She didn't ride it far, just a short trip around the block, but the feeling was exhilarating. The wind, once a cold reminder of absence, now felt like a playful companion, whispering promises of new roads. Sam, witnessing her quiet joy, understood the deeper meaning of this ride, the journey she was truly undertaking. The motorcycle was still Thomas's, always would be, but now it was also a symbol of Eleanor's courageous return to the open road of life. The public blossoming of Eleanor's spirit came, not in a grand spectacle, but in a small, deeply meaningful community event. The local Harvest Festival, an annual gathering in the town square, featured a community showcase for local talents and crafts. With gentle encouragement from Sam and a surprising nudge from Mr. Henderson, who mentioned her skills to the organizers, Eleanor decided to participate. She didn't enter a competition. Instead, she and Sam set up a small display. They showcased the meticulously restored chrome pieces, the restitched leather saddlebags, and a framed photograph of Thomas's motorcycle, now gleaming in all its glory. Beside it, Sam had placed his small, intricate wire sculpture of a miniature motorcycle, a testament to his own burgeoning skill and the lessons he had learned. People milled around their modest booth, drawn by the quiet dignity of the display. Mrs. Jenkins, initially hesitant, approached with a plate of her famous lemon bars. "Eleanor," she said, her voice softer than usual, a genuine warmth replacing her customary brusqueness. "This is truly remarkable. I never knew." Her words, simple and heartfelt, were an unspoken apology, a recognition of Eleanor's hidden depths. It was a moment of quiet understanding, bridging years of well-meaning but often hurtful indifference. Later, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the square, the festival organizer, a kindly woman named Martha, approached their booth. "Eleanor," she announced, her voice carrying across the gentle hum of the crowd, "the community would like to recognize your incredible talent and the wonderful work you've done with young Sam here." A smattering of applause broke out, genuine and warm. Eleanor, standing amidst the vibrant community, her hand resting on Sam's shoulder, felt a profound sense of belonging. Her usual quiet smile widened, her eyes shining not with tears of sorrow, but with the soft light of contentment. She was no longer a silent background detail. She was a vibrant thread in the community's tapestry. As the festival wound down, Eleanor saw Sam, not by her side, but across the square, showing a younger, slightly bewildered child how to properly hold a small, broken toy wagon he was helping to fix. The boy's eyes, wide with admiration, mirrored Sam's own when he first entered Eleanor's garage. The circle of kindness, sparked by a simple request for water, was continuing its gentle, hopeful journey. Eleanor watched, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. Her transformation was complete, not in a loud proclamation, but in the quiet, undeniable echo of her generosity, reflecting back into the world, brighter than ever. The quiet hum of Eleanor's life, once a mournful dirge, had now settled into a steady, resonant rhythm, much like a well-tuned engine finding its perfect cadence. The Harvest Festival, a vibrant blur of faces and laughter, had faded into a cherished memory, leaving in its wake a palpable shift in the air around her garage. Neighbors, once merely nodding acquaintances, now paused to exchange genuine pleasantries, sometimes even bringing small, ailing objects for her expert touch. The sense of invisibility that had shadowed her for so long had lifted, replaced by a warm, embracing recognition. She was Eleanor Vance, the skilled mechanic, the kind woman, the quiet heart of a budding community. Yet, as the days eased into a mellow autumn, a different kind of quiet settled in. Sam, her small, earnest apprentice, began to appear less frequently. His visits, once a daily certainty, became sporadic, then ceased altogether. Eleanor understood, with a profound wisdom born from experience, that such connections, though deeply transformative, were often transient, like wildflowers blooming in unexpected seasons. She had given Sam roots, a sense of purpose, a glimpse of the enduring spirit that thrives amidst loss. Now, it was time for him to find his own sky. One cool morning, a week after Sam's last visit, Eleanor found a small, unassuming box on her workbench, tucked beside Thomas's favorite torque wrench. It wasn't large, just a simple cardboard box, but its presence hummed with significance. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft, clean rags, lay a gleaming new bolt, perfectly sized for one of the engine casings, a small testament to his growing understanding of precision and care. Beside it was a miniature motorcycle, intricately crafted from bits of discarded wire, its tiny wheels capable of spinning, its handlebars perfectly curved. It was a crude but heartfelt masterpiece, mirroring Thomas's bike in its spirit, a testament to Sam's quiet observation and nascent artistry. And beneath it all, a single, folded piece of paper, a note, scrawled in a child's uncertain hand. "Ma'am, you taught me that the roads keep going. I'm going to find my own. Thank you for showing me that the engine's roar can also be the sound of hope." Eleanor's hands, which had so expertly mended steel and chrome, trembled slightly as she read the words. A familiar ache tightened around her heart, not the raw, searing pain of initial grief, but a tender, bitter-sweet pang, the poignant beauty of loving and letting go. It was a farewell, not a tragic ending, but a new beginning, a quiet acknowledgement of the cycle of growth and departure. She sat on the workbench, the note clutched in her fingers, the miniature wire motorcycle a tangible link to the small, bright soul who had rekindled her own. The garage, filled with the ghosts of past journeys, now held the promise of future ones, not just for her, but for the boy who had passed through her life like a gentle, invigorating breeze. She understood, in that moment, that grief was not a destination but a landscape, constantly shifting, always yielding new terrain. Thomas was still with her, in the quiet strength of her hands, in the wisdom she shared, in the open kindness of her heart. But now, that space within her heart had expanded, making room for the memory of Sam's bright eyes, his eager questions, the simple joy of shared work. His departure, though it left a small familiar void, was not a return to solitude, but an affirmation of the connections she was now capable of forging. It was proof that her capacity for care, for mentorship, for love, was not extinguished by loss, but rather refined and strengthened. Eleanor carefully placed the wire motorcycle beside a faded photograph of Thomas, a young, laughing man astride his gleaming machine, a wide-open road stretching behind him. She whispered, her voice soft in the quiet garage. "I think he found the right path." It was a sentiment she knew Thomas, with his boundless spirit for adventure and his deep empathy, would have understood completely. The garage, once a place for tending to her own wounds, had become a crucible for growth, a forge where new purpose was hammered into being, not just for her, but for a young boy who had needed guidance. Her journey through grief had not led her back to where she began, but forward, to a place of unexpected richness, where the echoes of love resonated with the promise of new connections, proving that even after profound loss, the human spirit, with a little kindness and a lot of quiet strength, could always find its way back to the open road. As dusk painted the garage walls in hues of deep indigo and soft orange, Eleanor stood once more beside Thomas's motorcycle. The silence that now filled the space was profoundly different from the heavy, suffocating quiet that had encased her world 5 years ago. It was a peaceful silence, a resonant stillness, imbued with the lingering warmth of shared laughter, the memory of small hands on tools, and the echo of a child's questioning voice. The polished chrome reflected the last rays of daylight, glinting like scattered jewels, each sparkle a tiny star in her newfound constellation of contentment. The bike, once a monument to a past love, had evolved into a beacon of enduring connection, a testament to how even the most profound grief could become fertile ground for new growth. The narrator, observing Eleanor's quiet grace, understood then that the human heart, much like the intricate machinery she so deftly repaired, was designed for resilience, for the continuous cycle of breakdown and meticulous restoration. Pain, however deep, was not an end, but a catalyst. It sculpted the soul, forging compassion from sorrow, wisdom from wounds. It was in the quiet, unassuming acts of giving that Eleanor had truly mended herself. She hadn't sought grand remedies or instant cures. Instead, she had found healing in the gentle rhythm of presence, in the patient sharing of her skills, in the profound act of seeing another's vulnerability and responding with an open heart. And she finally understood. The most beautiful roads are not those without shadows, but those where every turn brings a new horizon, painted by the quiet strength of a heart that dared to bloom again. Her own journey, once seemingly stalled in the barren landscape of loss, had unfolded into an expansive vista of purpose and connection. The solitude remained, a cherished companion, but it was no longer loneliness. It was the quiet space where seeds of future kindness could germinate, where memories could intertwine with new experiences, creating a tapestry richer and more vibrant than she could have ever imagined. Her life, once diminished, had rediscovered its profound melody, a soft, enduring hum that resonated with hope. As the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, Eleanor, with a decisive yet gentle movement, swung her leg over Thomas's motorcycle. The familiar weight of the machine settled around her, comforting and empowering. She started the engine, and its roar, deep and vibrant, filled the garage, a sound of life, not just remembrance. She donned her worn leather jacket and helmet, their familiar textures a second skin. The cool evening air brushed against her face as she rode out of the garage, leaving behind the comforting scent of oil and memory, heading towards the open road. The wind, now cool and alive, whipped around her, a tangible caress against her skin. The horizon, stretching endlessly before her, seemed wider, more inviting than ever before. And somewhere out there, a boy named Sam was also traversing his own path, perhaps with a small, quiet smile, carrying with him the reverberating sound of that which never truly dies, the kindness that teaches, the wisdom that guides, and the enduring love that remains, forever echoing in the vast, open spaces of the human heart. Eleanor was not just riding a motorcycle, she was riding a metaphor, a journey of the soul, a continuous discovery that truly the road keeps going. Eleanor's journey, paved with the quiet courage of a broken heart daring to open again, whispers a profound truth. Even in the deepest shadows of loss, there lies an inherent power to cultivate new purpose. Her story teaches us that true healing isn't found in forgetting, but in transforming remembrance into action, in allowing the compassion we once shared with a loved one to blossom into unexpected connections with the world around us. It's about recognizing that our greatest strengths often lie hidden within our quiet vulnerabilities, waiting for the gentle nudge of a new encounter, the soft plea of a thirsty soul to bring them forth. Pause for a moment. Consider the profound impact of a simple, unasked-for kindness. Think of Eleanor, a woman cloaked in grief, whose silent world was irrevocably altered by a child's innocent request for water. What small, almost imperceptible gesture of genuine care might you offer today? What quiet talent, honed by experience or inherited from a cherished memory, lies dormant within you, waiting for the right moment, the right person, to stir it awake? Perhaps it's a knack for baking, a steady hand for mending, a patient ear for listening, or a hidden wisdom gleaned from your own unique journey. These aren't just skills. They are threads of connection, waiting to be woven into the tapestry of another person's life, and in doing so, enriching your own. Eleanor's heart, once heavy with solitude, found its lightness not by seeking to receive, but by choosing to give, unconditionally and with open hands. Her transformation reminds us that the noise of the world, its indifference and haste, can often overshadow the quiet dignity of souls navigating their own battles. But it also reminds us that a single act of genuine connection, a shared moment of vulnerability, can disrupt that noise, creating ripples of hope that extend far beyond our immediate sight. This was Eleanor's spring of the soul. If her story watered something within you, if it sparked a recognition of your own quiet strength or inspired a forgotten kindness, let us know. Leave a bloom in the comments below. Share what you learned, what resonated, or what small act of gentle courage you might carry forward from her journey. Do not let your own story, with all its inherent beauty and quiet power, wither in silence. Your experiences, your insights, your capacity for connection are valuable. Let them bloom.